Admiral Vex stared at the tactical display with his 4 eyes narrowed in concentration. The holographic projection showed a fleet of ships approaching Dominion space, primitive vessels by their standards, but numerous. More numerous than any species had a right to field so soon after achieving faster-than-light travel. Humans, he spat the word like a curse. They've barely been spacefaring for a century. His second-in-command, Commander Trell, stepped forward. They're requesting communication, Admiral. Ignore them. Prepare the fleet for Battle Formation Delta. These primitives need to learn their place. The Dominion had ruled this sector for 10,000 years. Every species eventually encountered them, and every species eventually submitted. Those who refused were dealt with quickly and efficiently. The cycle never changed. But humans were different. They had been discovered 50 years ago, quarantined to their solar system, with a blockade of automated sentinel platforms. Standard procedure for primitive species. Study them, evaluate them, and when they were ready, in a few hundred years, formally introduce them to the galactic community. Except the humans had somehow bypassed the sentinels, and now they were here, at the doorstep of the Dominion core worlds, with a fleet. Admiral, Trell's voice had a note of uncertainty. I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from their vessels. Irrelevant. They cannot hope to match our technology. Yes, but our analysis suggests they've somehow. Trell paused, his scales shifting color with concern. They've somehow integrated wormhole stabilization into their weapon systems. Vex snapped his head toward his subordinate. Impossible. That technology is theoretical even for us. The largest human ship suddenly accelerated, moving at a velocity that defied the Dominion's understanding of human capabilities. Alarms blared across the command deck. They're hailing us again, Admiral. Vex hesitated, then nodded. Put them through. The holographic display shifted, showing a human male with gray hair and a weathered face. No elaborate uniform, just a simple black jacket with a small insignia. This was not what Vex expected from a military commander. This is Admiral Thomas Reed of the United Earth Fleet. We know what you've done. Vex maintained his composure. Human, you trespass in Dominion space. Return to your system immediately or face. We know about the other species, Reed interrupted. The ones you evaluated and found wanting. The ones you erased. A cold sensation ran through Vex's circulatory system. How could they possibly know about that? Those records were sealed in the deepest archives. We found their ruins, Reed continued. We decoded their final messages. And we made them a promise. What promise? Vex asked, despite himself. Reed's expression hardened. That we would come for you. The transmission cut. Moments later, the tactical display erupted with alerts as spatial distortions began forming around the Dominion fleet. Evasive maneuvers, Vex shouted, but it was too late. The void between the stars tore open, and humanity brought war to the Dominion. The battle above Dominion Prime lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, Admiral Vex found himself in the unthinkable position of ordering a full retreat. Status report, he demanded as his flagship limped away from the combat zone, its hull breached in multiple sections. 8 destroyers lost, 3 cruisers critically damaged, Trell reported, his voice hollow. The humans have seized control of the orbital platforms. How? Vex slammed his fist against the command console. How did they develop such weapons? The humans had somehow created localized wormholes that bypassed their shields entirely. Weapons fire emerged from nowhere, inside their defensive perimeters. It violated every understanding of physics the Dominion had established. On a secondary display, Vex watched as human dropships descended toward the capital city. Ground invasion was already underway. Open a secure channel to High Command, Vex ordered. We need reinforcements from all sectors. But the communications officer shook his head. Sir, we're receiving distress calls from all major Dominion worlds. They're under simultaneous attack. Impossible. The humans couldn't have fielded enough ships to attack multiple worlds at once. Unless. The archives, Vex whispered, "They need to be purged immediately." If the humans reached the central archives on Dominion Prime, they would have access to the complete history of the Dominion's expansion, including the systematic eradication of species deemed evolutionary dead ends, 73 civilizations wiped from existence over 10 millennia, their resources harvested, their worlds repurposed. All standard procedure, all for the greater good of the Dominion. On the surface of Dominion Prime, Defense Commander Zal coordinated the desperate ground defense. The humans were methodical, precise, and unnervingly calm in their assault. They didn't target civilians or infrastructure, only military installations and government facilities. "They're heading for the central archives," an aide reported. Zal issued emergency orders to the archive guards, but received no response. The communication network was failing across the planet. Meanwhile, in the sanctum of the Supreme Council, the 7 elders of the Dominion gathered in emergency session. "How did they find us so quickly?" Elder Mox demanded. "The quarantine protocols." "Failed," Elder Cree interrupted. "Obviously. But the greater question is how they learned about our past. Adjustments to the galactic ecosystem. The oldest among them, Elder Vos, leaned forward. "It seems we severely underestimated these humans. The assessment team classified them as a standard territorial species with moderate adaptability." "The assessment was flawed," Elder Cree said. "They're not just adaptable. They're vengeful." A human voice suddenly echoed through the Sanctum's communication system. "This is Colonel Jack Harrow of the United Earth Fleet. Your defense systems have been neutralized. Your fleet is in retreat. Surrender now." The elders exchanged troubled glances. In 10,000 years of Dominion rule, no such demand had ever been made of them. "This is Elder Vos of the Supreme Council. On what authority do you make such demands of the Dominion?" There was a pause before the human responded. "On behalf of the 73 civilizations you destroyed, we speak for the dead." The sanctum doors slid open, and armored human soldiers entered, weapons ready. Behind them walked a human female in a simple gray uniform. "I am Director Emily Wells of the Earth Archaeological Corps," she said, her voice steady. "And we have questions that demand answers." Director Wells spread the evidence across the conference table in the commandeered council chamber. Physical photographs, data crystals, and holographic reconstructions, artifacts recovered from dead worlds across the galaxy. 73 civilizations, she said to the assembled Dominion elders, each with their own art, culture, philosophy, and potential. Each determined by your assessment teams to be evolutionary dead ends, each systematically exterminated. Elder Vos remained stoic. "Your emotional attachment to these extinct species is understandable but misguided. The Dominion has guided galactic evolution for millennia. We removed developmental branches that would ultimately lead nowhere." Colonel Harrow, standing by the door with his hand resting on his sidearm, laughed without humor. "You're not gods. You're glorified gardeners who got too enthusiastic with the pruning shears." Wells held up a small, twisted piece of metal. "This is from the Thandari civilization. Your records indicated they were lacking innovative capacity and resistant to beneficial change. Yet we found evidence they had developed sustainable fusion 300 years before your encounter with them." She placed another artifact on the table, a crystalline sphere that glowed with soft blue light. "The Ilani, deemed overly philosophical with limited practical applications of technology. They had developed consciousness transfer technology that could have revolutionized your own society." One by one, she presented the evidence. 73 species, 73 crimes against sentience itself. "We humans have a long, bloody history," Wells said. "We've committed our own atrocities. But we learned from them. We grew past them. You've been doing this for 10,000 years without a moment of reflection or remorse." Meanwhile, aboard the human flagship Reckoning, Admiral Reed reviewed the tactical situation. The simultaneous assault on 27 Dominion worlds had succeeded beyond expectations. The wormhole weapon technology, reverse-engineered from ruins of the extinct Ilani civilization, had proven devastatingly effective. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we've secured the central archives on Dominion Prime. Data extraction is underway." Reed nodded. "And the colony worlds?" "The indigenous populations have been informed of the situation. Many are celebrating." It had been a gamble, informing the subjugated species of the Dominion about its history of extinctions. But humanity had bet on a universal truth. No one wants to wonder if they might be next on the extermination list. Back on Dominion Prime, in the lower levels of the government complex, Commander Trell moved furtively through maintenance tunnels. Admiral Vex's final order before his capture had been clear: activate the contingency. The contingency was the Dominion's ultimate insurance policy, a network of automated factory ships hidden in the void between galaxies, programmed to rebuild the Dominion from scratch if it ever fell. All Trell needed to do was reach the quantum transmitter and send the activation signal. He rounded a corner and froze. A human stood there, leaning casually against the wall. Looking for this, the human held up a small device, the quantum transmitter's activation key. "How did you," Trell began, "know about the contingency?" The human, Lieutenant Mark Davis, according to his uniform, smiled grimly. "We found the plans in the archives of the Silari. You remember them? The species you wiped out 3,000 years ago because they were pathologically paranoid and overly concerned with backup systems." Davis stepped forward. "Turns out their paranoia was justified. And their backup systems. We studied them, improved them. That's humanity's gift. We learn from everyone, even the dead." Trell realized in that moment that the Dominion had fundamentally miscalculated. They had evaluated humans as just another species. They should have recognized them as the inheritors of all they had destroyed. 1 week after the initial assault, representatives from 36 species gathered in the former Dominion Council chamber. Some were long-standing subjects of the Dominion. Others were nascent civilizations that had been headed for eventual assessment. All had been living under the shadow of potential extinction without even knowing it. Admiral Reed stood at the central podium, flanked by Director Wells and Colonel Harrow. The room buzzed with a mixture of hope, uncertainty, and lingering fear. "We didn't come here to replace one empire with another," Reed began. "Humanity has no interest in ruling the galaxy. We came because we recognized a pattern in the ruins we found, evidence of a systematic campaign of extinction that had to be stopped." A delegate from the Vrisht Confederation, a silicon-based species with crystalline appendages, raised a limb. "What happens to the Dominion leadership?" Director Wells stepped forward. "They will be tried for crimes against sentience. But more importantly, we're establishing a Galactic Truth Commission to document every civilization lost to their evolutionary guidance program." Across the chamber, murmurs of approval spread. Meanwhile, in the detention facility beneath the former Dominion headquarters, Elder Vos sat across from his interrogator, a human scientist named Dr. Alan Foster. "I still don't understand," Foster said, reviewing notes on his tablet. "Your species began as refugees from a dying star system. Your earliest records speak of the kindness shown to you by older species who helped you establish your first colonies." Vos' facial membranes fluttered in what might have been discomfort. "That was before we understood our purpose. Your purpose: to guide evolution, to prune the galactic tree of life, to ensure only the strongest branches survive." Foster leaned back. "Who gave you this purpose?" "We recognized it ourselves, after studying the inefficiencies of natural selection on a galactic scale. So you appointed yourselves the arbiters of which species deserve to exist." Foster's voice remained clinical, but his eyes hardened. "Based on criteria you established. Someone had to make these decisions," Vos insisted. "The galaxy cannot support unlimited diversity. Resources are finite." Foster tapped his tablet, bringing up an image of a lush garden world. "This is KS-419, one of your resource extraction planets taken from the Neheri before their extinction. According to your own records, you've harvested less than 3% of its available resources in 2,000 years. He swiped to another image, then another. Your empire hoards worlds you barely use while deciding other species don't deserve to exist at all. On the flagship Reckoning, Admiral Reed received a secure transmission from Earth. The United Nations Security Council and the Galactic Exploration Administration had reviewed the situation and approved the next phase of operations. Admiral, the UN Secretary-General's hologram flickered slightly. Your actions have the full backing of Earth's governments. The evidence you've recovered of systematic genocide is beyond horrifying. Reed nodded grimly. We've only scratched the surface, Madam Secretary. The archives contain extinction protocols for dozens more species that haven't yet achieved spaceflight. Prevent those protocols from being executed at all costs. And Admiral, the archaeological teams have made another discovery. Something about the earliest days of the Dominion that you should know. As the transmission ended, Reed stared out the viewport at the glittering capital of Dominion Prime. Humanity had come as avengers for civilizations they'd never known. Now they might become something more, preservers of a galactic heritage nearly lost to history. Deep within the Central Archives, Dr. Lisa Chen and her team of synorchaeologists made a discovery that changed everything. Buried beneath layers of encrypted data, they found the original records of the Dominion's founding, unaltered and intact. This contradicts everything in their official history, she explained to Admiral Reed and Director Wells in a secure conference room. The Dominion didn't gradually evolve their evolutionary guidance philosophy. It was imposed on them by another species altogether. She projected a hologram showing a tall, spindly species with elongated craniums. They called themselves the Precursors. According to these records, they encountered the early Dominion civilization about 12,000 years ago and recognized their potential as proxies. Proxies for what? Reed asked. Galactic management. Chen swiped through several ancient images. The Precursors believed the galaxy was becoming too chaotic with competing evolutionary paths. They wanted to implement a system of controlled development. But rather than do it themselves, they uplifted the Dominion species, altered their biology to extend their lifespans, and essentially programmed them with this ideology. Wells leaned forward. Are these Precursors still around? No. According to the records, they ascended to a non-corporeal state and left our galaxy entirely about 9,000 years ago. But their programming remained in Dominion culture, reinforced through their education system and governmental structure. Reed absorbed this information grimly. So the Dominion has been operating on autopilot, following the directives of a long-gone species. Essentially, yes, they've been running a program they didn't write and probably don't fully understand. This revelation complicated the human position enormously. The Dominion's crimes were real, but they had been, in some sense, victims themselves. Their entire civilization hijacked to serve another species' agenda. On Dominion Prime, the process of dismantling the massive governmental apparatus continued. Lieutenant Davis led a team investigating the assessment protocols used to determine which species lived or died. It's completely arbitrary, he reported to Colonel Harrow. Species with similar cultural and technological development received wildly different assessments based on minor genetic or sociological variations. Harrow frowned. Trying to make sense of genocide. Trying to understand how to prevent it from happening again, Davis replied. The bureaucratic machinery here is impressive. Billions of individuals participating in a system of extinction without most of them even realizing what they were doing. In orbit above the planet, the human-led coalition fleet had grown as ships from formerly subjugated species arrived to witness the fall of their oppressors. Among them was Captain Rawl of the Talesian Defense Force, whose ancestors had narrowly avoided extinction 3 centuries earlier by accepting complete Dominion rule. Admiral Reed, Rawl said during a coalition meeting, "My government wishes to express our deepest gratitude for humanity's intervention. But we're concerned about what comes next." Meaning? Reed asked. The Dominion maintained order across thousands of worlds. With their authority removed, ancient conflicts may resurface. Power vacuums rarely remain empty for long. It was a legitimate concern. The Dominion's harsh rule had suppressed numerous interspecies conflicts. Without their iron grip, centuries of resentment might explode into new wars. 5 years after the day of intervention, as it had come to be known, Admiral Reed stood on the observation deck of the Unity Station, the massive headquarters of the Galactic Cooperative that had evolved from the Transitional Authority. Below him, the Garden World of New Beginnings hosted representatives from over 100 species, including 17 that had been newly contacted since the fall of the Dominion. Admiring your handiwork, Director Wells joined him, her uniform now bearing the insignia of the Cooperative's Historical Truth Commission. Reed smiled. Ours. All of ours. The crisis with the contingency fleet had been resolved, not through battle as expected, but through reprogramming. Elder Vos, proving his commitment to redemption, had helped Commander Davis infiltrate the automated armada and replace its directives with a new purpose: exploration beyond the galaxy's edge. Now those ships sent back regular transmissions, mapping the intergalactic void and searching for signs of the long-departed precursors. The quest for understanding continued. The Ilani Restoration Project has reached Milestone 3, Wells informed him, referencing the ambitious attempt to revive one of the extinct species using recovered genetic material and cultural archives. They've successfully grown viable embryos. If all goes well, the first new Ilani will be born next year. It was a controversial project, filled with ethical complexities. Could a species truly be restored without its original cultural context? The debate continued, but the possibility of seeing even one of the 73 lost civilizations return offered a powerful symbol of hope. On Karish, the former Dominion homeworld, a remarkable transformation had occurred. Their society, once rigid and hierarchical, had embraced a philosophy of service and restitution. Carishian scientists now worked tirelessly to develop technologies that would benefit all species, and their diplomatic corps specialized in mediating interspecies conflicts. Dr. Foster had remained on Karish as an advisor, deeply involved in their cultural reconstruction. They're building something entirely new, he had reported in his latest update. A civilization defined not by control but by contribution. In the assembly hall below, the annual commemoration ceremony was beginning. Representatives from all known species gathered to honor both the lost civilizations and the new era of cooperation. The 73 luminous crystals, now housed in a special memorial, were joined by smaller lights representing each living species, forming a symbolic galactic spiral. Commander Davis, now captain of the exploration vessel Discovery, transmitted a message from the edge of charted space. We've made contact with a pre-FTL civilization showing great promise. Under the old Dominion, they would have been quarantined and eventually assessed. Under our new protocols, we're preparing for respectful first contact when they achieve the necessary technological milestones. This was perhaps the greatest change, the replacement of evaluation and judgment with respect and patience. The galaxy would develop not according to any single species' vision, but through the natural diversity of all sentient life. As Reed watched the ceremony below, he reflected on humanity's journey. They had come as Avengers, driven by righteous anger at the extinction of civilizations they had never known. They had remained as partners, helping to build something new from the ashes of empire. And perhaps most importantly, they had resisted the temptation to simply replace one dominant power with another. The precursors were wrong, Wells said softly, as if reading his thoughts. Diversity isn't chaos, it's strength. Reed nodded. That's the message we're sending to the stars now. Beyond the observation window, the galaxy spiraled in its ancient dance, countless worlds turning beneath alien suns. On thousands of those worlds, civilizations now developed without fear of arbitrary judgment, free to find their own paths among the stars. The day humanity came for the Dominion had begun as an act of war. It had transformed into something far more profound, a reclamation of the galaxy's future, not just for humanity, but for all sentient life, past, present, and yet to come.